And hello, is everyone able to hear me? I can hear the microphone. Great. Thank you so much. I am delighted to have been invited to introduce these folks to you here today. My name is Claire Motti, and I'm with Quality Assurance and Regulatory Services and a member of the DCRI Pride group. So I am very proud to have this opportunity to introduce some folks who are here from the LGBTQ Center of Durham to talk with you. And they have very nicely arrayed themselves according to their names on this list. So I'm going to start from my right with Natalie Wilson, who's a board member and a center supporter and active affiliate of CORDS, a queer youth summer camp, and the LGBT Center of Raleigh. Alan Teasley, who's a center volunteer most recently involved in the Photo Voice project with UNC's School of Public Health to explore LGBTQ elder issues. He's a retired Duke University employee and a retired Durham Public Schools teacher. Thank you for your service. Next we have Meredith Stewart, who's a board member and a local insurance company employee leading that organization's risk management efforts for youth-serving organizations. Then we have Milan Pham, who is the center's treasurer, a board member, and an active attorney on the front lines of securing justice and equality for LGBTQ families. Jessica Perkins Thompson from the Durham Crisis Response Center, a representative there, coordinator of the LGBTQ Services Project, which is co-located at the DCRC and the LGBTQ Center of Durham in an innovative partnership. And last but not least, Helena Craig, the board chair and executive director, and one of the founders of the LGBTQ of Durham. Now, each one of these folks is going to get an opportunity to introduce themselves and tell you a little bit about what they do, who they are, and the kind of work they're doing. Let's start with you, Natalie.
Sorry, y'all, I was trying to remember. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, cool. I was trying to remember if we were standing or not, and apparently we're not. So. Okay, well, for now I'm going to sit. So, hi, thank you so much for coming today. My name is Natalie Watson. I use they, them, their pronouns. I identify as queer. I am originally from Durham, was not born here, but have been here for 23 years. So I consider myself to be a true Durhamite. I joined the board of the LGBTQ Center of Durham back in October of 2017. Prior to that, I was involved with a community assessment group, let's see, dating back to 2014, where the inklings for the starting of the center happened. So I was involved from the very beginning in terms of creating and shaping the mission statement, values, points of unity, and that type of thing. And then was a frequent user in a positive way. I frequented the center. I'm good friends with Helena, and then I was brought on to literally on board to the board in October. I'm also involved as the volunteer coordinator at the LGBT Center of Raleigh. And then CORDS, which is Queer Oriented Radical Days of Summer. I'm a part of their core team. It is a overnight, week-long summer camp for LGBTQ identified youth and the children of LGBTQ identified folks. And I've been doing that since 2014. That's very near and dear to my heart. Wow, let's see what else. So, how did I get involved? I originally met Helena back in 2014 when I was doing volunteer work at the Raleigh Center. And even though I'm from Durham, I didn't necessarily have access to the queer community. And I wanted friends. I didn't have any at the time. And I was extremely shy back then, which like no one believes now. And so through meeting Helena, I was able to then be a part of the group that started the ideas for the center. And then from there, I was able to actually build community, which I've always found to be really important. Growing up, I had ebbs and flows of friends, and I usually have very close-knit friends, but it wasn't until within the past 5 years that I've established such a great community in the Durham, specifically Durham, that's just been extremely important. And when I found out about the center, I was extremely excited because being a queer kid from Durham, like, we are there. Like, it's pretty obvious to me if you go out in Durham how gay we are. So, like, why wouldn't we have a center? And it was amazing how much of a community involvement it was. The fact that it was just folks who came together who were like, Durham is unique. Durham is completely different from everywhere else, and we want to make something that represents what Durham is. So the fact that like our center is in a house, which I think is really cool. The fact that the community helped renovate that house in order to establish the center. That community folks are the ones who run programs. If you have an idea, you can bring it to the center and you can start that. The fact that we've had many other organizations come and use the center, it's just a great space for folks to be themselves as much as they can be. I come from the rule of thought that no space is safe, but we can make it as inviting and as welcoming as possible. And I definitely feel that way about the center. I'm gonna go ahead and pass the mic and then clearly answer any questions once we continue going on.
Thank you. I'm Alan Teasley. I use he, him, his pronouns and identify as gay. I am a Durham native, so I was born here. I went to school here. I went as far away as Chapel Hill for undergraduate. Actually got other degrees there as well, but I've also, since retiring from Durham Public Schools as first a teacher and then a central office administrator, I have also taught at Duke in teacher preparation. So I would say the biggest area of my concern prior to becoming involved with the center was actually working with LGBTQ youth. I volunteered for a while with an organization called GLSEN, the Gay, Lesbian, Straight Education Network. There was a local chapter of that. And that was before there were GSAs in every high school in Durham. Let's see, what else? So I became involved with the center because I was, as a retired person, recently double retired, with a lot of time on my hand, I got to thinking about the situation for LGBT elders and knew of some situations where people who were having to go into assisted living were almost having to go back into the closet in order to do that. They couldn't be themselves in that situation. So I knew that Raleigh's LGBTQ Center had an active SAGE program, which at least it used to stand for Senior Action in a Gay Environment. I'm not sure now that it's just SAGE. So I decided, well, maybe the Durham Center would want some work with senior folk. And so I went to a meeting, and then I went to this event for men, and I was the oldest person there by 25 years, which was great, you know, in a way. But, so I've been volunteering, and I just sit at the desk and do whatever I need to do to keep the doors open. I think that's important. But ask me questions about any and all of that. I'm going to pass the mic.
All right. Is this lavalier mic working? Yeah, okay. So I got the fancy lavalier mic. I'm not sure why. We'll find out later. My name is Meredith Stewart, and I'm a proud resident of Durham and a board member at the LGBTQ Center of Durham. I identify as a gay woman, and I use she, her, and her pronouns. And use of our pronouns is really important. You're going to hear all of us introduce ourselves that way, and it's really just a way to welcome people into our space and for there to be clear recognition and for us to sort of own how we walk through the world and to invite other people into that and to invite them to use their pronouns too. So as you hear us all introduce ourselves, you're going to hear that. You're also going to hear a lot of acronyms in our community. And so if we ever sprout out an acronym too fast or we don't explain that well enough, I hope that you will you'll keep that as a question to ask us. We would be glad to elaborate on any of these acronyms that we tend to throw around. But just for the sake of everybody being on the same page, it's the Lesbian, Gay, Bi, Trans, Queer Center of Durham. Right? And sometimes you'll see additional letters there on the end or the plus symbol. And just as really an initiative, an intentional initiative to make sure that everyone is included in the community and that there's space for everyone. So there's a little bit of that. Just wanted to sort of slow us down for just a minute and explain that, make sure everybody felt comfortable, because that's really important. I work in the insurance industry. I serve youth serving organizations. through the lens of risk management, making sure that youth are being served and protected through avenues for their growth, places like YMCA's, Jewish community centers, boys and girls clubs, and residential camps. So places where kids go and have some independence and freedom, make sure that they're safe, we're doing things well. And so through that lens, I think it's important for me to tell you that I've worked in direct service with children for the last 22 years. So I typically tell people I'm just an old camp counselor, longtime camp counselor. So if you need a Band-Aid or a hug or a behavior modification, that's me.
Will you take my 15-year-old daughter, please?
I will. You'd be surprised. So as a board member at the center, we're still growing. We're still relatively new in our space here in Durham. If you don't know where our center is, it's on Hunt Street in downtown Durham. It's kind of right behind the senior center. And you can throw a rock from our front porch and hit the senior center, hit Central Park Middle School, hit the YMCA, hit Central Park. So if you've never been to the center, you're welcome to come, and everybody's welcome. I hope you will stop by sometime. I hope you will feel welcome in our space and bring folks by. One of the intentional moves that we've made is to grow that space, to have an intentional space that is welcoming to all people, particularly members of the LGBTQ plus community. So anyway, I'm gonna pass it on down, but just wanted to recognize that there's many different people here. We all look different, we all identify differently, but we do have commonalities and we do have differences. And if we can sort of recognize those and be cheerleaders for one another, we can improve the Durham community. So that's what we're all about. Thanks for having us.
My name is Milan. I am on the board of the LGBTQ Center, one of the founding board members. That's right. Helena recruited us all, and she said, I need people who are brave enough and crazy enough to believe that this is possible. A center led predominantly by people of color for the LGBTQ community. And we are the first in North Carolina and probably the only in the Southeast. To be led primarily by people of color. And that's significant. My own identity is as a person of color. I'm an immigrant who immigrated under refugee law prior to the time when they separated children from their parents when they sought refuge in the United States. So I've been stuck with my parents for the past 40-some years because they didn't separate us. It's been pretty good. I identify as a lesbian. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I also respond to they, theirs, depending on the comfort level of the folks who are responding to me. I really believe in our center. I think it's important still, even in this age where there's, at least on the surface, more acceptance of LGBTQ folks. We are really in a period where regressive laws are being promulgated in all of the states. Every avenue that you can imagine where people are able to challenge the limited rights that have been granted, the limited equal rights that have been granted to our community, they are trying to do that. And it's been a scramble. Things that were promulgated under the prior administration have been rolled back, and civil rights organizations are working really, really hard to manage and keep up with the kind of litigation that's been moving forward. Our best hope will happen at the local level, and that's why our center is important, because we can respond to the people in our community in ways that legislators, senators, congresspeople can't respond to the community. That doesn't mean that you shouldn't be engaged on the state and national level, but really the local level is what's been most important for us in our community. I used to be a proud resident of Durham. I have since moved to Orange County for the love of my wife. I know, I know. But my heart is still here, and my law office is still here. So. I will be a returner always.
Hello, my name is Jessica Perkins Thompson. I use she, her pronouns and identify as a Black lesbian femme. I am the LGBTQ Services Coordinator with Durham Crisis Response Center, which is a nonprofit organization that has been serving survivors of domestic and sexual violence for over 31 years. Durham Crisis Response Center provides comprehensive services to survivors such as case management, crisis intervention. We have 24-hour crisis lines in both English and Spanish. We have an emergency shelter that provides shelter to all survivors, regardless of gender or sexual orientation. We have support groups, counseling, an immigrant and refugee services program. We provide community education and outreach. And then the newest program is our LGBTQ services program. So in 2017, Durham Crisis Response Center received a grant to be able to start an LGBTQ services program in collaboration with the LGBTQ Center of Durham. And so that program has now been operating since January. So as the LGBTQ Services Coordinator, I provide culturally competent direct services to survivors of domestic and sexual violence who identify as LGBTQ, both at Durham Crisis Response Center and at the LGBTQ Center of Durham. It's a pretty unique and exciting opportunity to have an anti-violence program housed and operating out of an LGBTQ center. It's really a model that doesn't exist. And so I think we're all really excited to continue developing that program and to really be able to fully integrate it into the LGBTQ center. I'm also excited to say that our program is growing, and we've been able to hire a second person who will primarily be doing capacity building trainings, technical assistance across the state of North Carolina, outreach, and counseling. Yeah, I'm new to Durham, so I don't have a lot of the historical information about the center and the city. I've only been here really since January. I came here for this position. This is work that I've been doing for several years that I started doing in Seattle at an LGBTQ anti-violence organization, and I'm super excited to be able to do here in Durham.
Good afternoon, all of you. My name is Helena Craig, and I'm the board chair, and I would say acting ED of the center, and with Milan and really Natalie, even though she wasn't on the board. We've all been around since the very genesis of it. In terms of my own personal history, I am a native of New York, but I'm not an OG Durhamite like Natalie, but I have been here about 15 years. I feel like a Durhamite through and through. My identity is I identify as a Black lesbian. My pronouns are she, her, hers. And I would say that when the conversation first began about the center, it really came from the Raleigh Center. So the LGBT Center of Raleigh is, we have been blessed to have them as a resource in the Triangle for approximately 10 years. But those of you who are from the area would know that Raleigh and Durham are really quite different places. So when they first initiated the conversation, there was a town hall of over 200 people showed up to say, yes, we want a center in Durham. But there was this confusion in the room as to why these Raleigh people would do it. So, so really it was sort of like almost a very organic call for it to start over again. And so that was when I joined the LGBT Center of Raleigh board. And it ended up such that they were our fiscal sponsor. And we created a center that really was by and for Durhamites. And so that was back in 2014, April of 2014, that we created our own steering committee and launched into the work that Natalie had described to you of really what would it look like to be the center that we want to be. We opened our doors in October 2015, so we really have been a crazy bunch who didn't know that we should be more measured. We were like, no, we need this now. It's going to be a thing. So we opened the doors in October 2015. And I would just repeat what Milan stated. It has been a very explicit intention of ours to be a different kind of center, to be one that really brings to the forefront the voice of the marginalized people. So for us, that means people of color. It also means marginalized identities like trans and non-binary identities. So when I was working with DCRC to like figure out what the crux of this conversation would be, that's really where the joy and the struggle comes in. that we are, as you can see, we're a motley crew of all different experiences. And like, how do we bring that together is really the joy and the struggle of how the LGBTQ Center exists and continues to grow and continues to find a way to have everybody's needs heard. And I think that's sort of like my intro to myself and the center. I wanted to share with you all a video that really kind of indicates one of the ways in which as much as we are centering our LGBTQ identity, we're all members of the community and really feel like that we're integrated in all parts of the community. Many things in the community impact us. And so this next video will give you an idea of how we really are there to stand in and deal with other issues other than just our identity.
The Better Together NC series of gatherings is a project with communities across rural North Carolina where the Klan and recent white supremacist groups are most active.
We're trying to give folks a space where they can come together from different parts of the state, from different backgrounds, and to have those conversations in a way that is very supported so that people can feel comfortable engaging person to person.
One thing that we're doing as a major part of the gatherings is providing dialogues at tables. So people have an opportunity to connect with folks, maybe who they know and maybe who they don't, but to also get folks to talk to each other at a deeper level about some things that are hard to talk about, like white supremacy. And so we're providing support for local people who want to serve as facilitators to be the folks at the table who bring out that dialogue and to encourage people to talk.
And we started with a lot of churches that were in the network of the North Carolina Council of Churches. We recognized that also these were predominantly white churches with predominantly white congregations that don't necessarily have conversations with people of color on an ongoing basis. Something shifted then.
We wanted to operate from a more expansive definition of what white supremacist violence looks like, how it shows up in our day-to-day interactions, in all of our in our work, in our schools, in our organizations, in our social movements, and really pushing white folks to think about how they've been socialized in white supremacy and how they, consciously or unconsciously are perpetuating that, and that it's a part of everyone, right? It's not those bad Nazis over there. It's a part of all of us, and we have to confront it or we'll keep perpetuating it.
We've shifted a little bit also to recognize some of the stuff that's happened both locally and nationally in the meantime. I mean, the three big things I can think of that really have influenced it are the fact that Trump rescinded DACA and Charlottesville, and the third thing is that the Confederate Memorial came down in Durham. We've really had to be nimble with what's happening locally and nationally and in the region in order to respond to it and work with local communities and community partners to figure out like what's happening on the ground, what do people need support around right now, how can we talk about the things that are happening here. So I think that that's shifted the project to one that's more about around sanctuary.
The sanctuary movement comes from the 1980s, and Mi Gente has done a lot of work working on an expanded sanctuary model that encompasses not just undocumented folks. Everyone who's a target of state violence can be included in this expanded idea. That's what we are trying to center the events around, is what do our communities look like when we really have sanctuary communities for everyone who lives there. People have really been responding well to being given this offering of having a shared meal and so much space and time to just talk. And once people have it, they are like, this is great. We want to keep doing this. So that has been a really awesome outcome that we've experienced so far.
Next steps are reinforcing the connections that have been made and making sure that people know how to gain access to each other. Individuals that I was talking to said, we knew about them and they knew about us, but we haven't really known how to connect. And they were kind of saying, this event has brought us together.
I think that there are some, I'll just say homegrown activists right here in this place today that are really fired up, wanting to see change. People are going to write to our elected officials, our county commissioners. We're going to continue to talk about how we can join together to be anti-racist here in this county. And I think we've got a long battle ahead, but I really believe that there's some fired up individuals who are like, look, I'm tired of this. We're not going to continue to live this way. We want to move forward together.
So I think what we have the opportunity to do now is just engage in some dialogue and questions with people in the room. Sorry, y'all. That's okay. We forgive you. And we understand that there's a whole community affiliated with Duke that's out there behind the camera today. And so we welcome everybody, even though you're not in this space. And so I'm going to give you just a second, and I want to encourage you to think of a question and to invite you into the conversation. And if you're comfortable when you ask your question, if you'll share your name and what your pronouns are, how you identify. Now that's certainly not required, so if that's not comfortable for you, that's okay, all right? But it might be helpful for somebody else in the room. So what questions do you have of us?
Yes. Go ahead. Oh, thank you. Hi, my name is Manuela Wiedemeyer, and my pronouns are she. I've never done it before, so she, her, hers.
Yeah, you did it.
I'm a black heterosexual female, and so I turn to you because my question is, I used to volunteer at a nursing home, so I have a soft spot for the older generation and enjoyed my time there. It breaks my heart to hear what you were saying about folks who feel like they're going back into the closet. And so I was wondering if you could just speak a little bit more about that and what forms of support have you seen for folks who are in a nursing home and being able to engage with others?
Oh, to repeat the question.
Mm-hmm.
You said that you had volunteered in nursing homes or worked in nursing homes and had a soft spot in your heart for elderly people, and it broke your heart that some might have to go back into the closet. Honestly, this is something I've heard more about, and I've seen a great documentary about than I've experienced or have heard of. And that was one of the reasons for working with the UNC School of Public Health on this photo voice project to get, it's like a preliminary study to get some folks together to talk about what their concerns are as they get older. What I would say about that is that I think single people are more vulnerable than people in couples, and until recently they couldn't be married. So their fear was that if they became disabled in some way or incapacitated, that their children or other family members would step in and exclude their partners, or would kind of not allow them to have and without the appropriate legal documents, sometimes people just didn't have access to that. And in fact, one of the things we're seeing now, both in housing for older people and in healthcare, is really there are efforts to make those more welcoming spaces for LGBTQ people. So that was one of the things that I learned about in working on this photo voice project with the center, was that one of the people in the study that had much more experience working with Duke than I did was telling about some of the treatment that one of her friends had gotten, and another person on some of the efforts to actually reach out and have people be made aware of this. I wish I could be more helpful and tell you specifics, but I would say it's really preliminary right now. And I mean, I'm approaching 70 years old, and that I'm a baby boomer, and there are a lot of gay and lesbian people on Social Security. and Medicare right now, and they are aging. And so if they have been relying on community organizations or small groups of friends, then some of that, as you get older, that becomes more fragile. So I would just say, I'd raise that as an area of awareness, and one of the things I'm most interested in exploring with the center. Sure.
I'm Bob Sandiford. I work at Outcomes. I'm just hetero, what is it, him, her, him. I don't know the term, the labels.
Yes.
I'm heterosexual. So I'm one of those that have no clue about the labels. So I don't understand him, no, what is it, they, them, and such as that. Clarify that. That doesn't make sense to me because I'm new. I don't understand all this sort of thing.
Yeah, so he was asking essentially, why are we giving like him, his, wow, him, he, his, they, them, theirs, she, her, hers. Why are we listing out pronouns? So whenever I explain what pronouns are to folks, I like to say it's whatever you want to be called besides your name. And so a lot of times folks just make assumptions of what someone's name would be, whatever they want to be called outside of their name based on presentation. So you might see someone walking down the street that you would assume is very masculine, might have whatever stereotypical things are associated with maleness, but that's not what they want to be called. Their name might be Jennifer and they use she, her, hers. So instead of making someone, making assumptions and making someone feel uncomfortable because of what society has put on us in terms of gender, we like to offer, when we give our names, we like to also offer you something else you can call us. That way you don't have to make a mistake, we don't have to feel some type of way about it, and it's just a lot more of a smooth process. It's like,
Remember all those different labels, like between however many people there are. I would get easily mixed up.
you know what? That's completely understandable. And something that I like about the South is how friendly we are. And so go ahead and be like, hey, my name is Natalie. I use they, them, their pronouns. If you just say who you are, that gives somebody else the opportunity to tell you who they are.
What do you mean them and they?
Okay, so.
Is that you? I'm not trying to be disrespectful.
Oh, no, you're fine. So a lot of folks, especially apparently if you're English majors,
I was an English teacher. This is very hard.
Not.
My mother's an English teacher, and so she's working on it. So this concept of the singular they, them, theirs. So folks, like I identify as non-binary. That means I do not identify as male or female. I see myself as something completely separate and different and wonderful. I use they, them, theirs in the singular sense, so that you don't attribute he or she to me. I think something that we get caught up in the U.S. specifically is grammar rules, and there's a whole system of classism and supremacy behind that. That's another story. But I think we don't realize that we use they, them, theirs in singular terms all the time. So say, for instance, Jessica's going to the store, they need to buy some milk. We wouldn't think twice about those two sentences, but we use the singular they to refer to Jessica. So that's just, I'm not an English person, so that's the best way I can explain it. But normally the folks that I are in my community who use they, them, theirs just don't want to use or don't identify with he, him, or his, or she, her, or hers. I hope that helps out just a little bit.
The them part.
Practice makes perfect.
Yeah.
Sorry, yes.
I think I would just say, if I can, it's okay to make a mistake, and sometimes it's a difficult transition to make. But when somebody introduces themselves to you with their name or their pronouns, it's one of the ways that you can really honor them and who they are. But it is okay to make mistakes. But we don't know until we try, right? So I would just encourage you to try, and to try to honor people with the way that they identify. And we can make a shift in our culture if we can honor people and lift people up for who they are.
And then I'll let you go, Shel. But I'm a CRA, so I travel around, and I was just at a site on Monday in Oklahoma, and at Integris, it's Integris Baptist, it's just a hospital in Oklahoma City, and on their badge, some people had their pronouns listed on their badge, and I thought that was just wonderful. She happened to see my laptop, which has our pride stuff and our human rights campaign all over in my lanyard, and she was just like, I'm really interested in that. And then she's like, look at my badge. And she's like, we have this thing going on in our hospital system that, you know, allows us to put our pronouns on here so people are not uncomfortable with how they address you. And I was like, that is wonderful. So. Anyway,
the other thing that I can say is just being in Durham, it's kind of like y'all and all y'all, right? I mean, like, how inclusive is that? Like, you know, there's y'all, and then there's all y'all. You know, so
he, him, and his,
and yeah, and that's not gendered and very inclusive. And so, you know, I might suggest that we, you know, really put a national push, you know, out of Durham for y'all and all y'all. Yeah.
Hi, my legal name is Michelle. My preferred name is Shelley. I'm in the process of dropping my ex-husband 11 years ago last name and resuming my maiden name. I use the pronouns she, her, and hers. I am a lesbian. My concern with the current administration that we have, my fiance and I are planning a wedding next April. And we are seriously considering just going to the Justice of the Peace and getting married and having a ceremony next year. Simply because we don't want to lose that right to get married. I live in Mebane, and I would be interested in getting more information about how I can be involved in the Alamance County area.
Can we rely on you for an answer here?
Well, so from a legal perspective, we aren't really concerned at this moment about losing the right to marry. The reason why is that we have the justices, we have the same justices who promulgated the right to marry for our community, and we don't really stand to lose any of them. And if we did, worst case scenario, it would take a while for a case to percolate up to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court works on a doctrine of stare decisis, which is basically a doctrine that says the decisions the Supreme Court made previously won't be reversed. There's only one instance in which the Supreme Court on constitutional issues reversed itself and ignored the doctrine of stare decisis, and that was on the issue of slavery. And so our Supreme Court, even when it's extremely conservative, has a really good record of maintaining its trajectory forward, and a fairly good record of recognizing when it's made monumental historical mistakes. And so while that took time in the case where they reversed their decision, we're not anticipating that they will be reversing the marriage equality decision. I think it's going to be a lot more like reproductive freedom, and what they're going to do is chip away at it, chip away at the rights that are related to marriage. There's some cases that are percolating up at this point that are being led by GLAAD and Lambda to deal with issues where employers are saying, you know, employee benefits for dependents are not necessarily due to the employees of same-sex, the spouses of same-sex employees, because they're not a right related to marriage, and therefore we don't have to give those benefits to the spouses of same-sex employees. I think that's more the way that we're going to see litigation moving at this point. I don't think that we're going to see a full reversal on marriage equality. I think we're going to see more creative tactics to try to dismantle the rights and privileges related to marriage. This will also impact different sex married couples, though. It's not just going to impact our community. And so, you know, folks need to be thinking critically about the rights and benefits related to relationship, period. We need a different economic model, quite frankly. We need something that really is based on economic dependency without regard to marriage. And that would help all of our families in many different ways. You know, families that are created, grandparents who are raising grandchildren, or grandparents who, you know, are having to raise, are having to come back and re-raise their own children for whatever reason, for whatever catastrophe. You know, if our tax laws are revised to be based on, these benefits to be based on economic dependency, I think it would be a lot easier for all of us. And to remove the marital benefits in our tax code and make those completely based on economic dependency. And there are models around the world where that works. And so I think a bigger fix is required. I don't think we're looking at total reversal on marriage equality. It's not to say that there's not a possibility of it, but it's very unlikely. Yeah. Alamance County, that's you.
Unfortunately, the sad state of affairs is there's an entire 5 LGBT centers across the entire state of North Carolina. So I wish that I could tell you there was a concrete place for you to plug in, but sadly that's not the case. There is an amazing Alamance Pride though, so I would invite you to go there and check out the folks tabling. And there's probably going to be grassroots efforts bubbling up, but I would definitely encourage you to get involved in them. There's one really cool group of high school students called Queer Fish. I imagine they need some help, but you know, what we always try to lift up is the people in the local communities know best what they need and how you can get involved. So I would just make that invitation, or I'm happy to take your information and see if I can make some connections for you.
I wanted to put in a plug for the Durham Courthouse regarding marriage, because my husband and I got married there in April 2015, which was after the court case that allowed gay marriage in North Carolina, but before this, it became a national model, right? And they couldn't have been more welcoming. Every step of the process, they were welcoming. When we walked in to pay our fee or whatever, he said, "We're here," and she says, "We know why you're here." And just being, you know, and paid our fees. Everything with the Register of Deeds was great. And then when I went in, we just had whatever magistrate was on duty, you know, knocked on the door and went in, sat there and waited. And when the magistrate walked in, he just happened to be a cousin of mine who said, "Is it the young people getting married?" I said, "No, it's me." But I just want to say they couldn't have been nicer. And one of the things that I'm really proud of Durham, they've hosted the Pride Parade for a number of years in Durham, and the Gay and Lesbian Film Festival, and it has seemed to me an island of welcome in a state that sometimes isn't welcoming. But I just did want to put in that plug for the courthouse.
Also, if you were to go to our website, you will see there's an array of community resources, and we have one whole tab on weddings. So you could find you an amazingly supportive of the community officiant. You can find some caterers. You can find all the things. We got you covered.
Great question. Thank you.
Other questions?
Yes. You go. Great. Let's go to you. Yeah. Thank you.
Hi everyone. I know a couple of you, but I'm happy to see you again. Because I haven't seen some of you that are back there. My name is Jonathan Hill-Rory. I'm a Duke alum, currently at Harvard School of Public Health, and I'm working here this summer doing my practicum. And the work that I do is on suicide prevention and crisis management of students in particular. And one of the things that I study is that in LGBT population, suicidal ideation is a huge issue. And for college-aged, not necessarily in college, it's still a pretty big issue. So I'm wondering, on the topic of resources, what are the resources that y'all have or like might be looking for to deal with like crisis management situations and things like that?
Before I pass the mic, I wanted to say there's a really great program that is federally funded, oddly enough, that North Carolina Central is working on suicidal ideation and prevention from a three-tiered approach, one being veterans, one being LGBT identity, and of course I'm going to forget the third right now, but yes, yes. And so we're plugging into that. I can probably connect you to that. Did somebody else have something they wanted to share? But yes, it's a huge problem, and yeah, thank you for your work.
I think it's always worth recognizing people with marginalization and not feeling part of a community, not feeling like they have a place where they belong, or people that they can reach out to for help. And that is, as you identified, a significant issue in our community. Because sometimes when you don't feel like you have those things, you can resort to feelings of desperation and suicidal ideology. And so recognizing that as part of our community, knowing that particularly young people may be experiencing those sort of feelings, and how we can welcome them into our community, into a clinical setting, or however we're serving them at the time. So, yeah, thank you for lifting that up.
There's, Jonathan, there's a project that is being sponsored by the National Center for Lesbian Rights and another group whose name I can't remember now. It's a religious group. It's called the Family Acceptance Project. And basically what they have been doing is working directly with families of queer young people to say you don't have to be okay with your kids being LGBT, but you do have to be supportive of your children. And that will reduce the suicide rate of LGBT young people. And it has been very successful. It's been very successful. It's given parents who are having a very hard time with their kids' sexual identity or gender identity language to discuss it with their children. It's been giving them appropriate responses to help support their children and keeping children in home in a way that hasn't been happening for our community, because you already know that a lot of our young people end up on the street. 40% of homeless youth are LGBT. And we're just a small portion of the population. It shouldn't be that way. Yeah.
Can we come back to you? Yeah,
please. So when I was in college, it was LGBT. So would you please clarify how Q is related to LGBT or different?
Who wants it? Natalie?
Oh, we're gonna have fun.
Okay.
So.
Repeat the question.
Oh, yes. So you were asking when you were in college, it was LGBT, and where did the Q come into play, and how does it relate to the LGBT? So depending on who you talk to, Q stands for queer or questioning. There's also I can't remember the name of it, but I stands for intersex, A stands for ace or asexual. It can go on and on. But specifically queer. So for a lot of folks growing up, queer was a derogatory term. And it was thrown at you, and it's one of those things that was a resurgence. I want to say, it feels like it was most recently that queer's become more accepted, but queer theory itself as like an academic thing was brought about in the 80s. But queer, I think, is, it can be a very individual thing, but queer can also just represent the entire community. So queer encompasses folks who are lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, pansexual, asexual. It can include everyone pretty much, including gender identity. Within the term. And it's something that my generation, so 80s, 90s babies, have started to reclaim. And so for me, because my gender identity is not something that's readily accessible or available to everyone, or something that I was even aware of as a child, and now as an adult, I'm like, wait, I don't have to be male or female, I could just be me. Queer allows me to have both my gender and my sexuality in one term. And so that expresses also it expresses like who I choose to date, who I choose to include in my community, and that type of thing. So queer has definitely become more of a term within the past like 15 years. And depending on where you are, some centers have chosen to add it. So like for instance, there's a huge queer community in Durham. There's a huge lesbian community in Durham. There's a huge gay community in Durham. There's a growing number of trans folks in Durham. And so it was important to make sure all those identities were included in the center. But like for instance, the Raleigh Center is LGBT. It doesn't mean they don't love queer people, doesn't mean it doesn't include queer people. But when they were creating their center back in the mid-90s to the mid-2000s, queer wasn't necessarily something that had to be on the forefront. So they have LGBT. Some centers don't even use any of the letters. Some centers just speak to either a spectrum or like gender and sexuality and diversity. So it just depends on really what the community wants. But yeah, queer can be an all-encompassing term. Usually somebody tells you that they're queer, that means that, you know, they're LGBT something.
And if you think about either gender or sexuality in terms of a spectrum, right? So the queer term can be encompassing of many identities that fall on either of those spectrums, right? And we breezed over asexual. It can also mean ally. So even if you do not identify as any of the previous LGBTQ letters, you may identify as an ally of a member or of the community as a whole. So kind of point that out, yeah.
And not to put too fine a point on it, but when I was in college, it was just G. and there was a fight to get the L.
You guys ask great questions. Thank you. Who else has a question for us? Yes.
I'm here. I'm one of the project leaders here at DCRI, and I'm also part of the Pride group since its inception. So I think I've always struggled with, you know, how to navigate through this space and work setting. So in a meeting, you can't go in and say your pronouns. And to me, some people prefer to keep it personal and private, and some people are very open about it. And my second point, I guess, is, you know, do we really want to look at people for their orientation, or within workspace, do you want to recognize them or look at them for, you know, their skill set? So I just always find it difficult to find a balance, I guess. Like, what is the appropriate way to, you know, to navigate through this space and workplace? Like, are there any like etiquettes that we should, you know, be trained on? And I've been asked by a couple of managers, like, how can I tell my employees that I'm supportive, but not like, you know, putting like a banner outside my office? So, I mean, I would love to get some trainings and, you know, for our team, and I've always struggled with how to manage it.
They should put the banner outside their office for starters.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, there's nothing wrong with advertising that you're an ally.
Well, may I interject with what you just said? One of the things that the LGBT Center, which is now something different at Duke, used to offer the ally training.
Yes, I was just thinking of that.
And there were triangles that you got after you took the training. And so posting that triangle, I used to post it in my office, and that was kind of, this is a safe space. So if there was something that we could go back to, and perhaps it's a matter of the love equals love stickers that were being given out, is that a manager could just simply put that somewhere. You know, it's not in your face to someone who's more conservative and could care less, but it's something that we would know to look for, and we would know it's okay, it's a safe space. And especially, and I've seen a lot of employees who are wearing the lanyards. And so that also lets me know that I can tell you how my weekend was with my fiance and my girlfriend versus you making an assumption about, you know, someone who's a man.
I think that the best way that you can do it as a leader, a supervisor, a manager, is to lead by example. And so if you get up and you say, my name is, and my pronouns are, I mean, that sends a pretty strong message to the people who you are leading. You know, management communications come out for all kinds of things. So, you know, what you see is also important. Who you see is important. You know, as important as it is, you know, to recognize, you know, African American History Month, you know, it's also important to recognize when Pride is. You know, so if you're sending out any kind of communications about, you know, recognition of marginalized people, make sure that you're including all the marginalized folks, and recognize that people have many identities, you know, so they can be on the margin in many, many different places. And every time that from my perspective, you're seen, that's an important thing. People know when they're being seen. They absolutely know. Like, if you have that triangle up, they're gonna, if they're looking for it, they're going to see it. If they're unseen, they're going to see the triangle, because that's your language to them, saying, I see you.
So I do think subtle things help. Something as simple as a triangle, the love equals love, a rainbow or something or another. I would touch base with the center here at Durham, not in Durham, excuse me, at Duke. We're in Durham, to see if they could do like comprehensive trainings, and I know they still do the safe zone trainings. I recently came from a workplace where I was as out as possible. And I think it's a balance of recognizing that there's an idea of what professionalism is and what etiquette is. And that's always looked extremely straight. It's always looked extremely conservative. And there's a way to be professional and completely be yourself. So I know when, like, I used to be really anxious when I go to interviews and like I'm wearing dress pants and a vest and a button-down shirt. How are they going to read me? How are they going to accept me? And I came to the conclusion that if you're not going to hire me based on how I look, then I don't want to be in your place of business. And as a manager, as a supervisor, I think having those subtle things outside your office helps. Not batting an eyelash if somebody mentions the fact that they're, whomever they were out with, if they said partner or fiance, and the terms that they happen to use are the same gender as them, to not give it a second glance helps. My entire company knew I was a drag king, and they came out to my shows. I never thought I would have that. So I think if we start trying, we can start chipping away at these assumptions that people have and this idea of what an etiquette is, and realize that folks should be able to be themselves. Now, I also recognize the fact that it's also nobody's business. So the idea is to leave the space open. Not that you have to out yourself, not that you have to say this, this, and this, but just allow the fact that you have a consciousness that there are many different folks out there and many different people have to express themselves in many different ways. And so it's a huge thing that when you have this triangle or you have a love equals love sign, I look for stuff like that. So I look for the fact that there's something somewhere that means if I bring up my girlfriend's name, you're not going to give me a double look. And I know that there's also an idea of like this work-life balance, but we spend so much time at work. Like, we have to be realistic that when you have to hide that much of yourself, it completely drains you mentally. It completely can add to your anxiety. It can add to your depression. And while my last job sucked for other reasons, I was able to be myself. And that's something that I haven't had before.
Good question. Yeah, my name's Kelly. She, her, hers. I like the fact that you guys played a video about sanctuary. You know, so one of the things I've been thinking a lot about in these sort of horrifying, traumatic times is that one thing that gay people of a certain age have to offer young people is some knowledge about how to navigate closets and how to create them and how to live in them. Which is not necessarily the best knowledge to have, but the notion of sanctuary I really like, because it takes the onus of protecting you off yourself and makes it a collaborative project that people do with and for each other. And I wasn't aware of this project that you were doing, but it's such a nice project and it's such a good basis for organizing across communities as well, right? Because if we all do that for each other, you know, I'm glad I know a little bit about closets as I see what's happening around here, but I don't really want to go back and live in And this is really a nice alternative that I think could be broadened.
And no one should have to live in a closet.
Right.
Right? Anybody want to comment? Are we on time?
Your work relates to what she was saying in some way, right? Jessica? Yeah. And I know people can stick around and ask questions if you don't.
Yeah, we'll definitely be available afterwards if you have any particular questions. You know, there will be a moment where we will definitely invite you all to help us to provide sanctuary. And we already touched on it somewhat in regards to what a large percentage of our homeless youth, for a variety of reasons, some being family rejection, some being just not being able to cope with the home environments they're in or the foster care system giving them a healthy place to be. But we will definitely invite you all to support us as we try to move towards programs where we protect our youth in a variety of ways. So this won't be the last time you hear from us, and we hope that you will definitely join us in those efforts.
Do you have a mailing list or something like that that we can get on when we go to your website?
Yes, you can go to our website or you can go to our Facebook page and you will see where you can sign up to our mailing list. We probably do better at communicating through social media, but if you go to our website, you can always look at our calendar of events at the center, which you're always welcome to. As I said, we have the community resources. We have a variety of ways that you can reach out to us. And, you know, we definitely have a lot of people who send folks our way. So we have several therapists when folks are looking for a space where they can be themselves, they will send people to us. So, yeah, we definitely always have our doors open, literally 7 days a week. And there's a big red donate button on the top of every page. We invite you to utilize that and share with your friends.
So, I think I'm being called to wrap it up. Thank you so much, our folks who have visited us here today, and we look forward to working more closely with you as part of the Duke community. Go Durham. So thank you all very much for being here today. Good afternoon.